What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We are back doing some rugby news today. This is a little series I do where I check on a game of rugby that's upcoming in the background and we go through some of the teams, some of the lineups, what I'm expecting from the game as a little game preview. This week is Super Saturday. The first game we will have kicking off is going to be Wales versus Scotland. So the teams I've got on screen. Let's kick this game off and get into it. And we're underway here. So the first team we're going to look at today is going to be the home side. It's going to be Wales. Wales announcement came out today. And it's a pretty standard Wales side by all accounts. One of the big changes that stands out immediately for me is going to be that Nick Tompkins is going to be starting on the bench rather than Owen Watkin. I actually think this is a very good decision. I think Nick Tompkins has had quite a good impression so far on a lot of people coming into this Wales team. If you remember all the way back in sort of February area, he made his sort of first real big appearance where he came on against Italy in the second half and ended up scoring, it was either 2 or 3 tries in that one game, and after about 60 minutes he'd only been on for about a minute and a half and he was already doing really well. I think Nick Tompkins is one of those lads that he's still a bit young, he's still got a lot to learn, but he's very, very strong and very, very quick. So I think putting him on against a weakened, tired side is where he's currently in his element. He didn't have a great game against France. He didn't have a bad game by any means, but I think putting him with that number 12, I've seen him play an awful lot at number 13. Of course, he had Hadley Parkes there at 12. There's been a bit of a shift around. Jonathan Davis coming back into the team. So there's been a lot of big switches here. For everyone that did watch that Wales-France game, you know how much Wales are currently struggling with an awful lot of things. That was a painful game to watch for me. Defensively has been very, very poor. So they've got a couple of switches in here. Owen Watkin, who isn't actually the best defensive player, is going to take over at number 12, but I think bringing Tompkins on later in the game is going to be very, very useful for the team. The rest of the team is a relatively standard Wales team. They've dropped Reese Webb, which is a bit of a talking point now for Gareth Davis. In my opinion, I don't really think Webb should be anywhere near the team at this point. I do believe Gareth Davis is probably still the number 1 scrum half in Wales, and I think very closely he's followed by Thomas Williams. I think he's having a very good set of play, Thomas Williams, and he just can't seem to get that number 9 shirt. Reese Webb, of course, came back over from France. He's now playing back in Wales, and he's sort of jumped the gun and got already into the team, which isn't a terrible thing. He's not the worst scrum half in the world, but I believe he's far past his time now. Getting the ball out of the ruck, the initial playmaking is very, very slow from him. He's a big advocate for this sort of picking the ball out of the ruck and needing to do at least 1 or 2 steps before passing the ball. His box kicking has improved immensely, and that is one thing I will say is probably going to be missed in this. Gareth Davis box kicks haven't been anywhere near what I would probably want them to be for an awful long time. He either just boots it as far as he can, which does nothing, or he kicks it way too high and it only goes about 4 yards. So I do think hopefully Reese Webb, if he's not going to be playing, hopefully we'll have been able to input a bit of knowledge in a training session of how to actually do box kicks. I think that'll be immensely useful for Wales. But they've got a lot of things to try and sort out in a very short amount of time. Lloyd Williams, of course, they're still on the bench, number 21. He's going to be nice to see him coming back in for Wales. I don't actually know what's happened to Thomas Williams. I don't know if he's injured or that's why he's been sort of left out of this team. A debut is going to be made for Shane Lewis-Hughes, who I can't say I know an awful lot about, but I'm going to be excited to see him going on at the flanker position. There's some big names for me on this Wales bench, which I think is going to be where a big difference is going to come in. Wales are going for the full 80 here in this team. You know, Dylan Lewis, Wyn Jones, Corey Hill, James Davis, Reece Patchell, Nick Tompkins. There is not really a lot of inexperience, I would say, in this side. They've gone for a very respectful number of caps among the team. They sort of know what they want to do, and I think they'll be desperate to finish this Six Nations on a positive note. They have struggled an awful lot throughout this Six Nations with their only win coming against Italy so far, and it would be nice to see them win against Scotland, but I think they're going to have to make some big decisions. One of the big things that's let Wales down is the lack of Shaun Edwards. It is immediately apparent, and anyone that saw that Wales-France game, you can see the difference Shaun Edwards has made in that France side. There is some brilliant defensive work. They are absolutely disciplined, minus a minor forearm to the face of Wyn Jones, which was absolutely a red card. But they've definitely had a big loss. Their scramble defence for Wales, which used to be such a strong point for the Welsh team generally, broken play and split defence was one of their best sort of attributes, and they seem to have lost that completely. There seems to not be a great deal of game management between them, which is so bizarre considering the names that are on this team sheet. You know, Dan Biggar, Josh Adams, Liam Williams, Lee Halfpenny, Justin Tipperick. You know, these names are world renowned, and it's so bizarre that they haven't quite seemed to manage to gel together this year. Maybe it's the new management, maybe there's a lot of decisions. One thing that I'm struggling with a little bit is that how much they are shifting up the team in key areas, whereas you see some of the other teams like Scotland and Ireland and France are trying to make people do debuts in certain positions, surrounded by experience in order to try and push them to be better. I feel Wales have struggled a little bit. They've sort of just changed big names. Like, let's get rid of North, let's chuck Liam Williams on another. You're getting rid of a good player for another good player. The team cohesion can go a little bit down because there's not enough experience. I'm expecting Wales to have a good game, but in all honesty, I have seen the Scotland versus Georgia game, and Scotland are looking ferocious, and I think Scotland could be in with a good chance for this one. It's a strong-looking Wales side, and I hope they do awfully well, and I hope Shane Lewis-Hughes has a good first game. I'm expecting Wales to have a very slow start in this game, and for it to slowly sort of pick up as they get more into the game, and I think that second half for Wales is going to be the clincher. We all saw what happened against France. They had that first 10 minutes where they got to like 12-0 or something and just lost it from there. I think there's going to be a big second half for Wales to try and hold out. But let's talk about this Scottish team. So let me chuck the Scotland team on screen for you guys now. And this is a big, big Scottish team. First thing that's jumping out at me is the return of Finn Russell. Finn Russell, of course, has been out for an awful long time, and especially under Gregor Townsend. I was never actually expecting to see Finn Russell back. He has pushed an awful lot to have Adam Hastings there at the starting at fly half. But Finn Russell's back in. It's going to be interesting to see how he does. Obviously a quality player. Just a bit too much whiskey on occasion. It's always his downfall. But this Scotland team is looking powerful. I actually only watched today the Scotland versus Georgia game where they won decently. They were not messing about. Every single penalty they got, they were going for the corner or a tap. They were not going for points. They weren't going for scrums. They just wanted to keep that ball going. They've obviously put a bit of prep in for this Wales game. They wanted to play very, very hard for as much of the 80 minutes as possible. There have been quite a few changes from that Georgia side. Obviously, they're coming up against a Tier 1 nation, so they've had to make some changes. One of the big things that was interesting in that Georgia game was they had a slightly different setup where they actually had Adam Hastings starting at fly half with Finn Russell on the bench. With that number, I think it was the 22 shirt I think Finn Russell had for that game. And I think Georgia had prepped for watching Adam Hastings come off and Finn Russell come on and take over at fly half. But what actually happened was they took off James Lang, who plays number 12 in the centre. They took off James Lang and brought on Finn Russell. Finn Russell moved to number 10 and then Adam Hastings moved to number 12. And what that did is they basically created a playmaker in a fly half position on both sides of the park. They effectively had two fly halves at the same time, copying a bit of the England style with the George Ford and Owen Farrell partnership. And to be honest, it worked very, very well. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get to see that again and watch Adam Hastings go back in at that number 12 or maybe 13 shirt if he wants to play centre, and leaving Finn Russell out. As a danger duo, it is up there. They are both very skilled players, very good passing ability, picking those passes, flat passes, lob passes over the top. They know how to pick players, and I think they're going to do very, very well. Blair Kinghorn has moved back from his fullback position back to his left wing, where no one gives him the ball. From everything I've ever seen, as Stuart Hogg comes in, we don't need to talk an awful lot about Stuart Hogg. We know who he is. Everyone knows who Stuart Hogg is. Darcy Graham had a superb game against Georgia. He scored 2 tries and is looking absolutely rapid, considering that in the Rugby 20 game, I think they considered Darcy Graham to be slower than Aaron Wainwright. That's the stats of this game. But across the board here, you know, the front three here, Rory Sutherland, Fraser Brown, Xander Fagerson, big names, experienced names. Even going at that second row, Scott Cummings, Johnny Gray, Jamie Ritchie, Hamish Watson, Blade Thompson. I mean, this whole front 8 is such an experienced group. And then bringing on from the bench Stuart McInally and Ben Toulis, who had another great game against Georgia. I think this forward pack for Scotland's looking very, very strong. And some good replacements coming on here. I think Scotland are going to play actually quite a forward game. Seeing what they did against Georgia, knowing Georgia are very big to their forward play. They haven't got a lot of wingers for speed. They haven't got a lot of outside play. They just power through the middle. I think Scotland got a lot of practice in for that, and we're expecting to do the same against this Wales side. I think they're just going to try and chip away. A lot of pick and drives, a lot of crash balls. Ali Price is a sound scrum half, and I think he'll do very, very well. Across the board, I think Scotland here have actually got a potentially winning team. As much as Wales are still class higher in ranks, Wales have had a very poor Six Nations. I think Scotland are in with a really good shout here. And having seen that game that they had against Georgia, that was their practice game. They get to get back into it. They're not coming in cold. Wales are going to want to play a hell of a lot differently from how they played France. It wasn't convincing. It wasn't like an international team should be. Scotland against Georgia looked very professional, very well done. There are a couple of handling errors. There are always going to be a couple of handling errors. But I think with the big ball carriers, the Hamish Watsons, your Jamie Ritchies, I think people like that just doing crash ball lines, given how easily the Wales defensive line broke down against France when coming up against very similar people like Vakatawa, just crash ball. There was nothing special about it. They were just going hard at the line, making Wales commit 2 men to a tackle, more men into a ruck or a maul. I think Scotland have a good shout to run away with this. So much so that I think I'm actually going to put Scotland as the potential winners for this game, in my opinion. I don't think it'll be a great deal. I think Wales will have a lot to prove and they will not want to lose this final game. My prediction for this game is going to be Scotland to win. But not by a lot. I see Scotland winning by 5 or 6 points, I think. I think they've got the depth in the squad. I think they've got the nice little duality of having strong, powerful forwards mixed with strong, speedy forwards in the world of Hamish Watson and Jamie Ritchie, as well as fantastic playmakers in Finn Russell, and I wouldn't be surprised if Adam Hastings comes on at 12 to create the double playmaker game that they had against Georgia. And then we all know the speed of people like Blair Kinghorn, Darcy Graham, Stuart Hogg. I think Wales are going to really struggle to shut down. This looks like a very inclusive Scotland team. I think if they can cut out some of the mistakes they had, the knock-ons and some of the kicks over the top, I think Scotland are in with a good shout. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. For this game, we're going to be doing all of the Super Saturday games coming up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all of our rugby previews as they're coming out. I'll see you all next time, guys. Bye-bye.